The Pittsburgh Steelers made a splash 24 hours before OTAs, moving on from Master Teague at running back, a name that almost everybody thought was their RB3 this season. So now what? What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/allsteelerstalk and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, we're talking about whoever is the Steelers' replacement for Master Teague, and I have an idea. I have a thought that I've had the same thought really for the last 2 years. It hasn't really come into fruition. If you followed the show long enough, if you followed me long enough, you know who I'm about to talk about. You know the name that's coming to mind. And I believe that the Steelers, well, they're finally ready to put that plan into motion, and not hold back. And there's nothing holding them back from doing so. Let me read you a quote from last year when the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Indianapolis Colts in Indiana with Benny Snell Jr. and Anthony McFarland as their backup while starting running backs. Ant Mac's a guy that's always working and waiting for his opportunity. And he did some things that we saw in team development in the preseason that make him a little different than some of the other backs. I just thought he was an asset to us. Remember last summer when the Steelers utilized Anthony McFarland everywhere? He's playing wide receiver, slot, a little bit of halfback, obviously playing running back. They utilized him in a number of different ways. We really thought that he was this is Matt Canada's offense. He wants to get creative. He wants to utilize guys in different ways. Anthony McFarland is the test subject to see if they can do so. It didn't pan out. Benny Snell Jr. was too dominant in pass protection on special teams to kind of bump Anthony McFarland out. Jaylen Warren was obviously the guy who was earning the number 2 spot. That wasn't going to change. And then there was Najee Harris, who isn't going anywhere. The Steelers didn't have room for Anthony McFarland. The year before, an untimely injury stopped him from having any success in that season. Again, didn't have room for him. Didn't have the time to wait for an injury on his knee that lingered into the season. Didn't have time. Didn't have room. This year, they got nothing but room, and they got nothing but time. The Steelers don't have a true running back 3 outside of Anthony McFarland. He will compete with undrafted rookie and rookie minicamp tryout Alfonso Graham. He will also compete with Jason Huntley, former Philadelphia Eagle, and then it's just him. The Steelers bring 5 running backs into OTAs and minicamp. Usually they bring 6 into training camp. But last year, they only had 5 at OTAs and minicamp and then added a 6th once they got to Latrobe. Maybe that's their plan this year, and it very well could be. But Anthony McFarland has an opportunity right now heading into OTAs, and I'll head there in about an hour and a half, to showcase that he's deserving of that spot, that he could be utilized as that versatile piece, that he could be another weapon within the offense that the Steelers would love to utilize. Oh, and he could be a kick and a punt returner, which the Steelers don't really have an answer for right now. Many believe it'll be Calvin Austin, and I think that he holds the upper hand over everybody. But the Steelers would like to have a backup plan. They would like to have somebody else that could also be utilized back there. And Anthony McFarland, well, he's that guy. It's been a long time coming for the former Maryland product who came into the league, and Mike Tomlin raved and raved and raved about what this guy can do outside of running the football. All they talked about when he entered the NFL was Anthony McFarland is so raw, but he has the ability to do so many things. And I believe that he has the ability to do all of those things. I'm an Anthony McFarland fan. I might be the biggest Anthony McFarland fan on the Pittsburgh Steelers market because I see what this guy is capable of doing if he could put the pieces together and if the offense could work in his favor. You obviously can't run this guy up the middle every time and say, hey, you are a 3-down running back, have fun, get hit, enjoy running between the tackles. That's not what Anthony McFarland's here to do. That's not what his skill set is, but he has a skill set, and his skill set is very unique. He's able to catch the football out of the backfield. He's able to utilize his speed and explosiveness. He's able to be somewhat of a secret weapon in an offense that has plenty and plenty of talent. When you have Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, Connor Hayward, Calvin Austin, Allen Robinson, all on the field, and then you toss Anthony McFarland out there, you may look at him and say, this guy isn't somebody you have to be concerned with. But once he touches the football, magic happens a lot of the time. And if that's the case, well, you got too many weapons to focus on him. The Steelers know that. The Steelers see that. You put Jalen Warren out there, guys are going to focus on Jalen Warren. You put Najee Harris out there, guys are going to focus on Najee Harris. You put Anthony McFarland in the backfield with all of those weapons around him, defenses are going to lay off their running back. And Anthony McFarland's good enough to make something happen. I'm not saying Benny Snell wasn't last year, but he wasn't. He's not that same type of guy. He's a run between the tackles, plug it up the nose, hit somebody, gain a couple of yards type of running back. It works, but it's what the Steelers already have. Anthony McFarland allows them to just utilize his skill set in a different fashion, and again, utilize it as somewhat of a secret weapon. I do expect the Steelers to bring in another running back at some point during this offseason. In the summer, at some point, whether it's minicamp or training camp, the Steelers will sign somebody. Last year, they brought in a former Tennessee Titan the day of training camp, and I could see it again. That's when they start to really gain speed. They're going to take reps off of Najee Harris, put more on Jalen Warren, put more on Anthony McFarland, put more on these guys competing for a roster spot. Try out guys like Monty Pattenbaum, Monty the Mullet, as you know him, those types of things. The Steelers will very much so utilize the options that they have at running back to take the load off of Najee Harris and let these guys compete for a spot with the second and the third team offense. They also want to see what they have in their backup offensive line and guys like Kevin Dotson, Nate Herbig, LaRaven Clark, Dylan Cook, all of these names who will get opportunities. Spencer Anderson's another one, rookie, who will get opportunities to showcase their run blocking ability with guys like Anthony McFarland, Jason Huntley, Alfonso Graham, and so on and so forth during the summer. The Steelers look at all of that and say all of that is important. So to have bodies is key to success of these backup linemen because you just want to see what they're capable of, but you don't want to put too much bulk on somebody that you plan to take into the season. The release of Master Teague opens the door for a Benny Snell return. It opens the door for one more splash. There has to be a reason that 24 hours before OTAs, the Steelers decided to create not just one, but two roster spots when they already had one available to them. They didn't need to do so, but there has to be some logic, some form of thinking, some game plan by Omar Khan and company to say, hey, these guys we're going to bring in. This is the next splash we're going to make. This is the cap room that we have to work with. These are the players that we're bringing in. They're not just going to walk into training camp or the end of mini camp or whenever and say, well, we just have 3 open roster spots. We'll fill them eventually. We don't need 90 guys. We have 87. No NFL team is thinking that. No NFL team ever thinks that. And the Steelers aren't going to just leave some roster spots open and not move forward with them. But I believe that Master Teague was there to compete with Anthony McFarland, but they have a plan for him this season. They look at Ant Mac and they say, this guy has an opportunity to be our RB3 and to really be a weapon for us if we could utilize him properly as that RB3. Maybe he gets 5 snaps a game. Maybe he gets 0. I don't know. All I know is that you don't release a running back 24 hours before you touch the field, a guy that was a fan favorite and that many anticipated to be in competition for that final roster spot, unless you feel that confidently about somebody else on your roster. And if I had to guess, just judging off what we know and what we have known about Anthony McFarland and the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's the reason that they feel super confident and able to create 2 roster spots for other needs 24 hours before OTAs.